The heart monitor's steady beep had become background noise over the past 3 hours. Calden Rowe sat sadly in the plastic chair beside Mira Soren's hospital bed, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. The room smelled like disinfectant and the faint scent of the wilted flower someone had brought days ago. Mira's fingers felt cold in his rough hands. At 78, she had fought harder than most would have. The dementia had taken pieces of her mind, but her spirit remained fierce until the end. "You were always good to me, Calden," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Better than my own daughter." Calden squeezed her hand gently. "Save your strength, Mira." "No." Her eyes opened, sharper than they had been in weeks. "Listen to me. The nurse has something for you. Don't let Rin see it first. Promise me." "I promise." The monitor's beeping slowed. Mira's grip loosened. Tell her I knew," Mira said. Then she closed her eyes. The flat-line tone filled the room. Calden didn't move, didn't call for help. He sat there holding her hand for another 10 minutes, listening to the sounds of life continuing in the hallway outside. Families talking. Children crying. Normal people dealing with normal grief. Dr. Puddle entered quietly. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Rowe." Time of death: 4:47 p.m. Calden nodded and released Mira's hand. He stood, his knees stiff from sitting too long. The doctor began his routine, but Calden barely heard the words. Outside the window, Rivermore stretched out under gray October clouds. Somewhere in that city, his wife was probably having dinner with friends, or working late, or whatever excuse she would use this time. "Mr. Rowe," a nurse stood in the doorway. Janet, according to her badge, held a white envelope. "Mrs. Soren asked me to give this to you personally. She was very specific about that." Calden took the envelope. His name was written across the front in Mira's shaky handwriting. The paper felt heavier than it should have. "Thank you." Janet nodded and left him alone with the body of the only family member who had ever really cared about him. Calden walked to the parking garage. The envelope stayed unopened in his jacket pocket during the drive home. Only when he sat in his kitchen, with a beer growing warm on the counter, did he finally break the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a brass key, and 3 photographs. The letter was brief. "Calden, if you're reading this, she's finally done it. Go to the garden house. Trust no one, especially Ren. The key opens everything you need to know." Mira, below that, 3 names were written in block letters. Lennox, Cordian Verlin, Gregigius Marjolo, Hajuar. Sace Calden stared at the names. Lennox worked with Ren at the insurance firm. The other 2 meant nothing to him. He turned over the photographs. One showed Ren entering a restaurant with a man he didn't recognize. Another was a bank statement with numbers circled in red ink. The third was too blurry to make out clearly. His phone buzzed. A text from Ren. "Running late. Don't wait up." The same message she had sent 3 times this week. The call came at 11:30 p.m. Calden was still awake, sitting in his living room with the letter spread across the coffee table. He had memorized every word, studied every photograph until his eyes burned. "Calden, I just heard about Mira. I'm so sorry." Ren's voice sounded hollow through the phone. Professional, like she was offering condolences to a client. "Where are you?" Calden asked. "I'm at Rachel's. We had book club tonight, and then we went for drinks. I would have come to the hospital, but I didn't think you'd want me there." Calden closed his eyes. 2 years ago, Ren would have been at the hospital before he even called her. She would have brought coffee and stayed all night if needed. "Mira asked about you," he lied. "What did she say?" "She said not to trust you." Silence stretched between them. Calden could hear music playing in the background on her end. Voices laughing. "You know how paranoid she got in the end," Ren finally said. The dementia made her suspicious of everyone. "Did it?" "Calden, I know you're grieving. We can talk about this when I get home." "When will that be?" "I don't know." "Late." Rachel's going through a rough divorce, and she needs support. More lies. Calden had seen Rachel at the grocery store last week. She seemed fine. Happy, even. The funeral is Thursday, Calden said. Of course. I'll take the day off. We'll get through this together. Together. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. I should go, Wren said. I love you. The line went dead before Calden could respond. Not that he would have said it back, but he picked up the photographs again. In one, Wren was walking hand in hand with a tall man outside Romero's, the Italian place downtown. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago. The same night, Wren had claimed to be working late on a difficult case. Calden set the photo down and picked up the brass key. It was old, tarnished, with a number etched into the metal, 47. To Mira's garden house. He remembered helping her organize it last spring, back when she could still remember his name most days. She had been secretive about certain boxes, asking him to store them on the high shelves without looking inside. Now he knew why. The next morning, Calden drove to Mira's old property on Maple Street. The house had been sold 6 months ago when her condition worsened, but the new owners had agreed to let Mira keep using the small garden shed until the end of the year. The key fit perfectly into the lock on a metal box, hidden behind bags of fertilizer. Inside, Calden found a USB drive, another sealed envelope, and a stack of photographs that made his stomach turn. The first photo showed Wren and Lennox Corbin in bed together. The image was grainy, taken through a window, but there was no mistaking what he was seeing. The timestamp was from 6 months ago. The second photo showed documents spread across the table. Calden could see his own signature on several papers, but he had never signed anything like these. Power of attorney forms, bank authorizations, all dated within the past year. The third photo showed Wren meeting with an older woman outside a coffee shop. Both were smiling, shaking hands as if they had just closed a business deal. Calden opened the second envelope. Inside was a single sentence. The USB has everything. Watch it all. Trust your instincts. Mira. He drove home and plugged the USB into his laptop. The drive contained dozens of video files, each labeled with a date. Calden clicked on the oldest one. Mira's face filled the screen. She was sitting in this same garden shed, looking directly into the camera with the clarity he remembered from years ago. Calden, if you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you found what I've been hiding. Her voice was steady, determined. I started making these videos 3 months ago, when I caught Wren going through my papers. At first, I thought she was just being helpful, making sure my affairs were in order. The video jumped slightly as Mira adjusted the camera. But then I saw her taking pictures of documents, my will, your bank statements, things she had no business looking at. So I started watching her more carefully. Calden clicked on the next video, dated 2 weeks later. I hired a private investigator. Cost me $2,000, but it was worth every penny. Mira held up a manila folder. Wren's been cheating on you for at least 8 months. This Lennox fellow, he's got serious money problems. Gambling debts. His business is failing, and Wren's been helping him. The next video was from a month ago. It's worse than I thought, Calden. They're not just having an affair, they're planning something. I found copies of forged documents in Wren's purse when she visited last week. Your signature on papers you never signed. They're setting up some kind of financial takeover. Mira leaned closer to the camera. I think she's been putting something in my tea. Little white pills dissolved in the honey. I started feeling worse after her visits, more confused, so I stopped drinking anything she brought me. Started pretending to be more out of it than I really was. The final video was dated just a week ago. I don't know how much time I have left, and I know it. But I've been documenting everything. The investigator found out about Wren's childhood friend. This Margalo woman who runs some kind of charity scam. They're all connected, Calden. And you're the target. Mira's eyes hardened. Don't trust anyone. Not even your friend Alec. I saw him talking to Ren outside the bank last month. Everyone has a price, and your wife knows how to find it." The video ended. Calden sat in silence, staring at the black screen. His hand was shaking as he thought about the past 2 years. Ren's sudden interest in his military benefits, her suggestion that he add her to his bank accounts for convenience, her constant criticism of Mira, trying to drive a wedge between them. All of it had been planned. Calden drove across town to the community center where Alec Reed worked. His oldest friend was leading a group therapy session when Calden arrived. So he waited in the parking lot, watching through the windows as Alec guided troubled teenagers through their problems with the same patience he had once used to treat wounded soldiers. When the session ended, Alec walked outside and immediately tensed when he saw Calden's expression. "Goodness, Cal, you look like hell. I heard about Mira. I'm sorry, man. We need to talk. Privately." Alec glanced back at the building. "I've got another session in an hour, but we can grab coffee. There's a place down the street." They walked in silence to a small cafe. Calden waited until they were seated in a corner booth before he spoke. "How long have you known about Ren and Lennox?" Alec's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. "What? Don't play dumb with me, Alec. I saw you talking to her outside First National last month. Mira saw you too." Alec set down his cup carefully. Mira was confused at the end. "You know that. Answer the question." For a moment, the years fell away and they were back in Afghanistan, with Calden using the same tone he had used to question suspects. Alec's shoulders sagged. "About 4 months," he said quietly. "I saw them together at that Mexican place on 5th Street. They were close. Too close for coworkers. And you didn't tell me." "I wanted to. Goodness, Cal, I wanted to tell you right away. But you've been through so much already. The war, adjusting to civilian life, your dad's death. I thought maybe it was just a one-time thing. Maybe she'd come to her senses." Calden studied his friend's face. Alec had always been a terrible liar, even as a kid. His left eye twitched when he was hiding something. That eye was twitching now. "What else aren't you telling me?" "Nothing. I swear, that's all I know." "What did she want to talk to you about at the bank?" Alec's eye twitched faster. "She was asking about you, about your mental state, whether you've been having nightmares again, drinking too much." She seemed worried. "Worried about what?" "She thought you might be having a breakdown. Said you've been acting paranoid, suspicious. She wanted to know if I thought you needed professional help." The pieces clicked into place in Calden's mind. Ren had been building a case, establishing a pattern of mental instability that could be used against him later, probably to support some kind of incompetency claim. "Did you tell her I was unstable?" "No, absolutely not. I told her you were dealing with grief, but that you were handling it fine, that you were stronger than she gave you credit for." Calden believed that part. Alec had always been loyal to a fault. But he had still kept secrets, still chosen to protect Ren's feelings over Calden's right to know the truth. "I can't trust you anymore," Calden said, standing up. "Cal, wait please. Let me help you figure this out. You had your chance to help me 4 months ago." Calden left Alec sitting alone in the cafe and drove home. The trust was broken now. If Alec could lie to him about something this important, then Mira was right. Everyone had a price. That evening, Calden used his laptop to access his online banking. Everything looked normal at first glance, but when he dug deeper, he found transfers he didn't remember making. Small amounts, a few $100s here and there, moving from a savings account to an account listed under Ren's name. The transfers had started 8 months ago. He called the bank's customer service line and spent 40 minutes navigating automated menus before finally reaching a human being. "Mr. Rowe, I see the transfers you're asking about," the representative said. "These were authorized using your online banking credentials. The destination account is listed as a joint account between Ren Rowe and Margalo Hurst. I never authorized those transfers." "Sir, The transactions were made using your username and password. And according to our records, you added Mrs. Hurst as an authorized user on your account 6 months ago. Calden's grip tightened on the phone. I've never heard of Margot Hurst. I'm looking at the authorization form now. It has your signature and was witnessed by your wife. Another forged signature. Calden hung up and immediately changed all his passwords, then drove to the bank in person. The branch manager, a thin man named Peterson, reviewed the paperwork with nervous efficiency. These signatures look legitimate to me, Mr. Rowe, Peterson said, spreading the forms across his desk. But if you're claiming fraud, we'll need to involve our security department. Calden studied his supposed signature on the authorization form. It was close, but not perfect. The E in Rowe was slightly different from how he normally wrote it. I want this Margot Hurst removed from my account immediately, and I want a full record of every transaction she's been involved in. That will take a few days to process. Then start processing. Peterson nodded and began typing on his computer. Mr. Rowe, I should mention that there has been some significant activity on Mrs. Soren's accounts as well. Large transfers made just before her passing. What kind of transfers? Her savings account was emptied 2 weeks ago. The money was moved to the same joint account I mentioned earlier, the one with your wife and Miss Hurst. Calden felt cold. How much money? $87,000. Mira's life savings. Gone. I need copies of everything, Calden said. Every transfer, every authorization, every piece of paper with my name on it. Peterson nodded nervously. Of course. But Mr. Rowe, if these really are fraudulent transactions, you should probably contact the police. Not yet. I need to understand the full scope of what's happening first. Calden left the bank with a thick folder of documents and a burning rage in his chest. He sat in his truck in the parking lot and called information. I need a listing for Margot Hurst in Rivermore, Oregon. The automated system found an address and phone number. Calden wrote them down, then drove to the location. It was a modest office building downtown. The directory in the lobby listed Hurst as the director of something called the Rivermore Community Foundation. Calden took the elevator to the 3rd floor and found the foundation's office. Through the glass door, he could see a professionally dressed woman in her 40s talking on the phone. She had the same confident smile he had seen in Mira's photographs. He didn't go in. Instead, he took pictures of the office, the building directory, and the woman inside. Then he went home to plan his next move. The next morning, Calden drove to the offices of Mountain Crest Insurance, where Wren worked. He didn't go inside. Instead, he parked across the street and waited. At 12:15, Wren emerged with Lennox Corbin. Calden recognized him from Mira's photographs. Tall, thin, expensively dressed, but with the nervous energy of someone living beyond their means. They walked to a nearby restaurant, and Calden followed on foot. He took a table in the back where he could watch them without being seen. Their conversation looked intense, urgent. Lennox kept checking his phone, and Wren reached across the table several times to touch his hand reassuringly. After an hour, they left separately. Wren returned to work, but Lennox walked to a parking garage 2 blocks away. Calden followed him. Lennox drove to a rundown sports bar called Murphy's. Calden waited 5 minutes, then went inside. The place was nearly empty except for a few regulars watching television. Lennox sat at the bar, talking quietly to a large man with prison tattoos covering his forearms. Calden ordered a beer and took a seat where he could hear their conversation. "Told you, I'll have the money next week," Lennox was saying. "This deal is going through. Guaranteed." "That's what you said last month," the tattooed man replied. "Mr. Kozlov is getting impatient. 25 grand is a lot of money to be patient about. Tell Kozlov I understand his position, but this is real money we're talking about. 6 figures minimum. Worth waiting for. And if it falls through..." Lennox's voice dropped. "It won't. The old lady is gone. The husband is falling apart. Everything's in place. Calden's hand tightened around his beer bottle. He wanted to walk over and break it across Lennox's head. Instead, he forced himself to stay calm and keep listening. "What about the wife?" the tattooed man asked. "She's got it all figured out. Power of attorney, forged signatures, the whole thing. Once we trigger the mental health clause, we'll have control of everything. The guy's a veteran with PTSD. It won't be hard to make a case that he's unstable. And then Margalo processes everything through a charity. Clean money, untraceable. Lennox gets his cut. Ren gets hers. And I get out from under Kozlov's thumb." The tattooed man nodded. "You better be right. Because if you're not, your girlfriend's going to be a widow sooner than she planned." Lennox finished his drink and left. Calden waited 10 minutes, then followed. But instead of going home, he drove back to Mira's garden house. He needed to document everything he had heard while it was still fresh in his memory. Calden spent the next 2 days watching and documenting. He followed Ren to her meetings with Margalo Hirst. He photographed Lennox entering a casino downtown. He traced the connections between all the players in the scheme designed to ruin his life. On Wednesday morning, he called Alec. "I need your help," Calden said. "And before you answer, you should know that I know you've been lying to me. Cal, I told you everything. You told me what you thought I could handle. There's a difference. Now I need the truth, and I need you to do something that might be dangerous." Silence on the other end of the line. "What do you need?" Alec finally asked. "I need you to wear a wire and meet with Lennox Corbin. Tell him you want in on whatever they're planning." "Goodness, Cal. That's not something I can just. They're going to steal everything I have, Alec. They killed Mira, and they're planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so they can take control of my money, my benefits, everything. And they're going to succeed unless I can prove what they're doing." Another long pause. "How do I know you're not the one having a breakdown?" Alec asked quietly. "This sounds paranoid, even for you." Calden had expected this. "Because I have recordings, video evidence, bank records, and because if you help me prove I'm wrong, I'll apologize and get whatever help you think I need. But if you help me prove I'm right, we stop them. And if I say no, then you're not the friend I thought you were." Alec said, "What exactly do you want me to do?" Calden explained the plan. Alec would approach Lennox at Murphy's bar, claim he had heard rumors about a money-making opportunity, and see how much Lennox would reveal. Calden would provide a recording device and coach Alec on what questions to ask. They met that evening in a parking lot behind a closed restaurant. Calden showed Alec how to use the small digital recorder, taped it to his chest under his shirt, and went over the story he should tell. "Keep it simple," Calden said. "You heard through mutual friends that Lennox had some kind of business opportunity. You've got money problems since your divorce, and you're looking for a way to make some quick cash. What if he doesn't buy it? He will. These people are arrogant. They think they're smarter than everyone else." An hour later, Alec sat at Murphy's bar with Lennox Corbin, both of them 3 drinks in and talking like old friends. "So what exactly are we talking about here?" Alec asked, leaning closer to Lennox. "I mean, how much money?" Lennox glanced around the bar, then smiled. "Let's just say it's enough to solve both our problems. You need cash for your custody battle, and I need to get some very unfriendly people off my back." Sounds too good to be true. It's not. See, my girlfriend's got this whole thing set up. Her husband's a veteran, real messed up from the war. PTSD, anger issues, the whole package. It's just a matter of time before he snaps completely. And then what? Then she has him committed, gets power of attorney, controls all his assets, plus his mother-in-law's inheritance. We're talking 6 figures, easy. Alec pushed his luck. What if he doesn't snap on his own? Lennox's smile turned cold. Then we help him along. Guy lives alone, drinks too much, has access to guns. Wouldn't be surprising if he had some kind of accident. Or did something foolish and got himself arrested? Goodness, Lennox. That's serious stuff. Serious money requires serious commitment. But don't worry. Everything's already in motion. The old lady's gone. The paperwork's in place. And my girlfriend's got the husband so twisted around, he doesn't know which way is up. By the end of the month, we'll all be rich. Alec finished his drink and made his excuses. 30 minutes later, he met Calden in the parking lot and handed over the recorder. He's planning to have you killed, Calden, Alec said, his face pale, or framed for something that will put you in prison. Calden played back the recording, listening to Lennox incriminate himself and Wren with casual arrogance. It was perfect, almost too perfect. What are you going to do with this? Alec asked. First, I'm going to make copies and hide them where Wren can never find them. And I'm going to use it to destroy her. The next morning, Calden called the Rivermore Gazette and asked to speak with Tavia Lynn, an investigative journalist he remembered from his high school days. She had been friends with Mira, had even written a feature story about her volunteer work at the animal shelter. Tavia, this is Calden Rowe. You knew my mother-in-law, Mira Soren. Calden, I'm so sorry for your loss. Mira was a wonderful woman. She was, and she was also being murdered by my wife and her accomplices. The line went quiet. That's a very serious accusation, Calden. I have evidence. Recordings, documents, photographs, everything you need to prove fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Are you interested? Can you be in my office in an hour? Calden spent the rest of the morning in Tavia's cluttered office, laying out the entire conspiracy. She listened without interruption, taking notes, and asking for clarification on details. When he finished, she sat back in her chair and whistled. This is big, Calden. Really big. But I'll need to verify everything independently before I can publish anything. How long will that take? Give me a week. Maybe 2. I want to talk to sources at the bank, look into this Margalo woman's charity, check public records. If even half of what you're telling me is true, this story could bring down a lot of people. Calden left copies of everything with Tavia and drove home to wait. The trap was set. Now he just had to make sure he survived long enough to see it work. Tavia called him 5 days later, her voice excited. Calden, you need to get down here right away. I found something that changes everything. He drove to the newspaper office immediately. Tavia was waiting with a stack of papers spread across her desk. I ran background checks on everyone involved in this conspiracy, she said. Lennox Corbin, Margalo Hirst, and your wife. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. But then I dug into Wren's past, and that's when things got interesting. She handed him a photocopy of an old police report. Wren Thorne doesn't exist. At least, not originally. Her real name is Shayla Voss. She was adopted when she was 16, after being charged with elder abuse and theft in a case involving her foster grandmother. Calden read the report carefully. A teenage girl named Shayla Voss had been accused of stealing medication from her elderly foster parent and selling it to buy drugs. The charges were eventually dropped when the girl agreed to enter a rehabilitation program and submit to adoption by a Christian family. The Thornes adopted her. Tavia continued, changed her name, moved her across the country, gave her a fresh start. The adoption records were sealed, but I have a source in the court system who owed me a favor. Does this mean Mira knew? That's the really interesting part. Look at this. Tavia showed him another document. It was a letter from Mira to the adoption agency, dated 3 years ago. I'm writing to inform you that Shayla continues to exhibit the same patterns of behavior that led to her original placement in care. I believe she may be targeting vulnerable elderly individuals again. I'm concerned for the safety of others in our community. Mira tried to report her, Calden said, more than once, but Wren was careful, never got caught doing anything provable. And she had convinced everyone that Mira was just a paranoid old woman whose mind was going. Calden thought about the timing. 3 years ago was when Wren had first suggested they move in with Mira, to help take care of her. It was also when Mira had started becoming more suspicious and protective of her personal information. "There's more," Tavia said. "I found records showing that Mira changed her will 18 months ago. Originally, everything was supposed to go to Ren after you. But in the new version, there's a clause that if any fraud is discovered in connection with her death, all assets revert to her biological niece in California. She has a niece and a Thorn. She's a teacher in Sacramento. According to the will, Mira stayed in touch with her through letters and phone calls. Anna had no idea about the inheritance until I contacted her yesterday." Culden felt a surge of admiration for Mira's planning. Even in the grip of dementia, she had been smart enough to protect herself and her money from Ren's schemes. "Anna's flying out here tomorrow," Tavia said. "She wants to meet with you and discuss what happens next." "What about the story?" "I'm ready to publish. But I wanted to give you a chance to decide how you want to handle this. We could go public now, or we could wait and let Ren dig herself in deeper." Culden considered his options. Publishing now would expose the conspiracy, but might not be enough to guarantee convictions. Waiting might give them more evidence, but it also gave Ren more time to steal money or disappear. How long would you need to get enough evidence for criminal charges? Another week, maybe 2. But Culden, these people know you're onto them. Alex's meeting with Lennox probably raised some red flags. You could be in real danger. Culden smiled grimly. "Let them come. I've been ready for a fight for a long time." Ren came home that night, carrying Chinese takeout and wearing the smile she used when she wanted something. Culden was sitting at the kitchen table, reading through Mira's original will. "I thought we could have a quiet dinner," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "I know this week has been hard on you." "Has it?" She paused, studying his tone. "Of course it has. Losing Mira was devastating for both of us." Culden watched her move around the kitchen, getting plates and utensils. Her movements were careful, controlled. She was nervous about something. "I've been thinking about what you said," she continued, "about Mira not trusting me. Maybe we should talk about what that meant." "What do you think it meant?" Ren sat down across from him, her hands folded on the table. "I think she was confused and scared. Older people sometimes get paranoid when they're dying. They see threats where none exist. Or maybe they see threats that are real." "Culden, I know you're angry with me. About being absent lately. About not being there when she died. You have every right to be upset." She reached across the table to touch his hand. He pulled away. "I want to fix this," she said. "I want to fix us. Whatever problems we've been having, we can work through them. Some problems can't be fixed." "Ren, don't say that. We love each other. We're married. That has to count for something." Culden stood up and walked to the window. Outside, their neighbor was watering his garden in the fading light. Normal people living normal lives. "Tell me about Lennox," he said without turning around. The silence stretched long enough that he finally looked back at her. Ren's face had gone pale. "What about him? Tell me about your relationship with him." "He's a coworker. We work together on cases sometimes." "Is that all?" Another pause. Ren was calculating, trying to figure out how much he knew. "We're friends," she said finally. "Good friends, but nothing inappropriate." Culden turned to face her fully. "You're lying." "I'm not lying." "Yes, Lennox and I are close. Yes, maybe we've gotten too close sometimes, but it's not what you think." "What do I think?" "You think I'm having an affair. You think I don't love you anymore. Aren't you?" Ren stood up, her composure cracking. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Lennox. But it wasn't supposed to happen. It did. And I've been trying to figure out how to end it without destroying our marriage." The confession was smooth, practiced. Culden recognized it as another manipulation, a limited admission designed to hide a larger truth. "What about Margot Lohirst?" This time, the fear in Ren's eyes was genuine. "I don't know who that is." "You share a bank account with her." "No, I don't. The Rivermore Community Foundation, the charity she runs, the one that's been laundering money for you and Lennox. Wren sat back down heavily. Calden, I think you need help. Professional help. This paranoia, these conspiracy theories, it's not healthy. There's no fixing the rot. Wren. She stared at him for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. The mask slipped completely, and for the first time in months, he saw the real person underneath. You stubborn fool, she said quietly. You could have just accepted the story, could have let me take care of you, but you had to go digging around, had to play detective. So you admit it. I admit that you've become a problem. But problems can be solved. Calden heard the front door open. Footsteps in the hallway. Wren smiled. You should have minded your own business, Calden. A large man entered the kitchen. Calden recognized him from the photographs in Mira's files. Roland Griggs, ex-military like himself, but the kind who had been kicked out for violence. Mr. Rowe, Griggs said politely, we need to have a conversation. Calden assessed the situation quickly. Griggs was armed. He could see the outline of a pistol under his jacket. Wren was positioned between him and the back door. The front door was blocked. What kind of conversation? Calden asked. The kind where you sign some papers and agree to check yourself into a nice facility for people with PTSD. Nothing permanent, just long enough for your wife to get your affairs in order. And if I refuse? Griggs shrugged. Then we'll have to be more creative. Veteran with a drinking problem has a tragic accident. Happens all the time. Calden nodded slowly, then launched himself at Griggs. 2 years of civilian life hadn't dulled his combat instincts. He hit Griggs low and hard, driving him back into the hallway before the bigger man could reach for his weapon. They crashed into the wall together. Griggs was strong, but Calden was faster and more desperate. He got his hands on Griggs' gun and used the butt to hit him in the temple. Griggs dropped like a stone. Wren was already running for the back door when Calden caught her in the kitchen. She spun around with a knife from the butcher block, but he grabbed her wrist and twisted until she dropped it. It's over, he said. No, it's not. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine, and everyone thinks you're unstable. Calden zip-tied both of them, with restraints he kept in his toolbox. Then he called the police and set up his phone to record a video confession. When Griggs woke up an hour later, Calden was ready with questions, and with Wren already confessing to save herself, Griggs decided cooperation was his best option. That's why, by the time the police arrived, Calden had everything he needed on video. The trial took place 4 months later in the Rivermore County Courthouse. Tavia's articles had made the case famous throughout Oregon, and the courtroom was packed with reporters and curious locals. Calden sat in the front row, watching as the prosecution methodically destroyed the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed his life. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, forged documents, recorded confessions, and testimony from a dozen witnesses. Lennox Corbin took a plea deal and testified against Wren in exchange for a reduced sentence. He looked pale and defeated as he described the plan to slowly poison Mira and drive Calden to a mental breakdown. It was supposed to look natural, he said from the witness stand. Mrs. Soren was already sick. We just accelerated things. And Calden was already struggling with PTSD. We thought it would be easy to push him over the edge. Margolohurst's charity was exposed as a money laundering operation that had been running for years. She had processed stolen funds for dozens of criminals, taking a 20% cut for herself. Her testimony revealed a network of fraud that reached far beyond Calden's case. Roland Griggs admitted to being hired muscle, brought in to intimidate or eliminate anyone who threatened the operation. He had been planning to kill Calden and make it look like suicide. But it was Wren's testimony that drew the most attention. For 3 days, she sat on the witness stand and tried to convince the jury that she was a victim of circumstance, manipulated by Lennox, and forced into actions she never wanted to take. I love my husband, she said, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt him. But Lennox threatened me. He said if I didn't help him, he would hurt Calden anyway." The prosecution's cross-examination was brutal. They played recordings of Wren laughing about Calden's weakness and discussing how much money they would steal. They showed photographs of her celebrating with Lennox after Mira's death. Anna Soren, Mira's niece, testified about her aunt's fears in the months before her death. She read aloud from letters Mira had sent describing Wren's suspicious behavior and her growing certainty that she was in danger. Mira was a strong woman, Anna said. She wasn't paranoid or confused. She was scared. And she died knowing that no one believed her. The defense tried to argue that Calden had fabricated evidence and manipulated witnesses, but their case fell apart when confronted with the sheer volume of documentation. Mira's hidden videos were particularly damaging, showing a lucid woman describing criminal activity in detail. On the final day of testimony, Calden took the stand himself. He spoke quietly about his marriage, his trust in Wren, and the gradual realization that everything he believed was a lie. "She made me doubt my own mind," he said. "For months, I thought I was losing my grip on reality. She convinced me that my instincts were wrong, that my concerns were symptoms of mental illness." The prosecutor asked him about forgiveness. "Do you hate your wife, Mr. Rowe?" Calden looked across the courtroom at Wren, who was staring at him with desperate hope in her eyes. "I don't hate her," he said, "but I'll never forgive her. Some betrayals are too deep to heal from." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman read verdicts of guilty on all major charges. Judge Patricia Morrison called the conspiracy one of the most callous and calculating schemes she had seen in 30 years on the bench. She sentenced Wren to 18 years in federal prison. Lennox received 12 years. Margalo got 15 years and was ordered to pay full restitution to her victims. Roland Griggs, who had cooperated fully and provided information about other crimes, received 8 years. As the bailiff led Wren away in handcuffs, she looked back at Calden one last time. He met her eyes without expression, then turned and walked out of the courtroom. 6 months after the trial, Calden stood in his backyard with a metal trash can and a box of matches. Inside the can were wedding photos, love letters, and every other reminder of his life with Wren. He lit the match and dropped it in. The flames caught quickly, turning years of false memories into ash. Anna Soren had insisted that he take Mira's house, along with the dog Wren had always hated. Lenny was a 12-year-old golden retriever who had been Mira's constant companion. Now Lenny followed Calden everywhere, as if understanding that they were both survivors of the same war. Tavia had offered to write a book about the case, but Calden declined. Some stories were too personal to share with the world. Some victories were meant to be private. He had testified at 3 more trials as prosecutors used his case to bring down other members of Margalo's network. Each time he watched criminals get sentenced and felt a small measure of satisfaction. But mostly, he just wanted to be left alone. Alec had tried to rebuild their friendship, but Calden wasn't interested. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with apologies and good intentions. Some relationships were meant to end. His new life was quiet, simple. He worked on small construction projects around Rivermore. He took care of Lenny. He visited Mira's grave every Sunday with fresh flowers. Most importantly, he was free. Every morning, Calden jogged past the garden shed where Mira had hidden the truth. The brass key now hung on a hook in his kitchen, a reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. He thought about Wren sometimes, locked in her federal prison cell. She would be 64 when she got out if she served her full sentence. By then, he would be an old man living a life she could never touch. Justice wasn't always about punishment. Sometimes it was simply about survival. Calden had survived. Mira's truth had survived. And in the end, that was enough. He was alone, but he was never blind. And now, finally, he was free.